Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's Monday Zen and Zazen class. It's the last day of the Chinese year. Tomorrow is Chinese New Year, so I think there's less participants than usual. But those of you who are here after 30 minutes of Zazen, let's take a look at the Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki Shunryu after the sitting. Okay, thank you for joining. I want to return to the Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind text. The chapter today has the title Mind Weeds. 2 weeks ago, I think it was about mind waves, and the chapter before was control. Let me share the screen with you. 2 chapters before the control chapter, there was this beautiful metaphor that I also like to use about sheep. And Suzuki Roshi says to give your sheep or cow a large, spacious meadow is the way to control him. So we don't want to play the shepherd for the sheep, but we want to give them a wide meadow. And I think the meadow stands, well, for our mind, the expanse of our mind. And the next chapter had the title Mind Waves. And here he says about, among other things, so the waves stand for our thoughts and emotions. And he says, among other things, actually, water always has waves. In the beginning, we might think that Zen is about removing the waves from the ocean. But Suzuki Roshi says that's not the case. Water always has waves. Waves are the practice of the water. To speak of waves apart from water, or water apart from waves, is a delusion. Water and waves are one. Big mind and small mind are one. And today's chapter is rather short, so I'm not sure if I will be able to read the whole chapter, but let me try. Mind Weeds is the title. You should rather be grateful for the weeds you have in your mind, because eventually they will enrich your practice. So again, a little bit different metaphor. Now he's using weeds as a metaphor for the things that come up in our mind. When the alarm rings early in the morning and you get up, I think you do not feel so good. It's not so easy to go and sit. And even after you arrive at the Zendo and begin Zazen, you have to encourage yourself to sit well. I'm not quite sure what he means with sitting well, but I guess the idea is you have to make a little effort to sit there with your whole heart. Sometimes in the morning you wish you could sleep in for another 30 minutes or so. And even if you get up and sit on your cushion, you're dreaming. You're not really there with your whole heart. So sometimes that needs a little effort. You have to encourage yourself to sit there wholeheartedly. These are just waves of your mind. So basically this feeling, today I'd rather not sit. In pure Zazen, there should not be any waves in your mind. I don't know about you, but I find this sentence very confusing after the last 2 chapters where he said, give your sheep space. And then he says, don't separate water from waves. Actually, the waters are the waves. Waves are water. They are one. And now he says, in pure Zen practice, whatever pure Zen practice means, and I'm not quite sure. If you ask me what's the difference between pure Zen practice and our impure Zen practice, I couldn't tell you the difference. I think there's only one Zen practice, and that's 2 days Zen practice. The 30 minutes that we just said, that's Zen practice. You can't call it pure, you can't call it impure. But for some reason, here he says, If it's pure Zen practice, there are no waves. Confusing, because last time he said, waves are water, water are waves. But, well, Zen masters sometimes contradict each other. While you're sitting, these waves will become smaller and smaller, and your effort will change into some subtle feeling. I guess what he tries to say is using the metaphor of the sheep. If the shepherd stops to control the sheep, he gives them space, then actually they make less noise than before. If they totally calm down, if they totally disappear, is a different question. But the more you try to control the sheep, the more chaos they create. And the same with the waves. If you try to erase the waves with your hands or whatever, actually you will create more waves. If you realize the waves are just part of the ocean, then I wouldn't say that the waves disappear, but you're still stable. You're like a boat on the ocean. You're still feeling the waves, but the boat is anchored. The anchor is sitting at the bottom of the ocean. We say, pulling out the weeds, we give nourishment to the plant. So now he's using a new metaphor, a weed. And the point he's trying to make, I think, is weeds are not necessarily a bad thing, because when you pull out a weed, you can use it as compost, and this compost will give nourishment to other useful plants. Again, a little bit confusing, because who's making the distinction between the weeds and the useful plants, the vegetables? Sounds again like the shepherd that's making distinctions between the white sheep and the black sheep. And what he says here, it sounds like a little bit like you would kill the black sheep, you would remove them and feed them to the white sheep. And so still the black sheep, they have some use, because you feed the white sheep with the black sheep. But okay, maybe we shouldn't be too picky with the metaphors. Weeds are useful because you can feed them to the plants. So even though you have some difficulty in your practice, even though you have some waves while you are sitting, those waves themselves will help you. These emotions, these thoughts, these feelings, all the stuff that pops up during Zazen, eventually it will help you. You should be rather grateful for the weeds. So you should not be bothered by your mind. You should rather be grateful for the weeds, because eventually they will enrich your practice. If you have some experience of how the weeds in your mind change into mental nourishment, your practice will make remarkable progress. I think what he means here is, probably we all have some kind of question, some kind of doubt, maybe a lot of problems that bring us to the practice. And the hope, of course, is that we can resolve those doubts, those problems, by doing Zazen. At least for the 30 minutes that I sit, I hope that these problems are gonna disappear. But often that's not the case. Maybe the problem even gets bigger, the question gets even bigger. The small doubt that we had in the beginning, it turns into despair. But, and I think that's the point Suzuki's trying to make, what brings you back to the cushion each time? It is this question, it is the doubt. Without the problem, you would never have started Zazen. It's the problem that brings you back to the cushion. So thanks to the problem, thanks to the doubts and questions you have, you can continue. And sometimes these questions, for example, who am I? What's the meaning of life? Or then eventually, When we continue Zazen, we ask ourselves, what's Zazen in the first place? What's the meaning of what I'm doing here? They can also turn into something different, nourishing. It becomes an almost, well, childlike curiosity. Rather than making Zazen into a routine, you ask yourself, what is it I'm doing here? But it's more like what Suzuki Roshi calls beginner's mind. It's a childlike curiosity. What is it? This Zazen I'm doing today, it's completely new. I still, after all these years, don't know what Zazen is. What is it? What am I doing here? What is my life? What's the meaning of my life? How do I want to live? And who's asking this question? Where does the question come from? But those questions don't torment you anymore. Rather, you appreciate them because those questions help to keep your practice fresh. Those questions help you to keep your beginner's mind. So I think that's the point he's trying to make here when he says you should be grateful to the weeds. If you have some experience of how the weeds in your mind change into mental nourishment, your practice will make remarkable progress. You will feel the progress. You will feel how they change into self-nourishment, whatever self-nourishment means. I think I never heard that word. Of course, it is not so difficult to give some philosophical or psychological interpretation of our practice, but that is not enough. We must have the actual experience of how our weeds change into nourishment. Strictly speaking, any effort we make is not good for our practice because it creates waves in our mind. So now the topic changes to making an effort. And here he says actually making an effort, although it's important to get out of bed and sit on the cushion in the morning. You have to encourage yourself. Actually, here he says making an effort is not good for your practice because it creates waves. And again, before he said waves are water, water are waves. So I think there's nothing wrong with waves. But here he says it's not good to create waves in your mind. It is impossible, however, to attain absolute calmness of our mind without any effort. We must make some effort, but we must forget ourselves in the effort we make. I think this is a very important point he makes here. So at first he says, making an effort is not good for your practice because it creates waves. But then he says, actually, you have to make an effort to start with. It's a little bit like this famous koan that is also quoted by Dogen Zenji, for example, in the Shobogenzo Zuimonki. At the top of a 100-foot pole, so 30 meters, 100-foot high pole, you have to make one step further. But there's no way to make a step further. What happens when you make a step further? You're falling. But actually, this state of falling is probably what Dogen Zenji talks about when he says body and mind drop off. You fall, but there's no floor to hit. You completely let go. The moment you make this extra step, there's no more need to make an effort. You just drop. Everything drops. You fall, but there's no danger in falling. And that's the point, to let go, first you have to climb the pole. You have to climb these 100 feet. And only when you're at the limit and it seems I can't possibly make any more effort. I've reached the limit. And then you make this extra step. Only then can you say, actually, no effort is needed. So you have to make an effort to get into the zone, so to speak, where no effort is necessary. So on the one hand, you could say effort is not needed. Actually, effort is counterproductive, but you have to make an effort to actually realize that. We must make some effort, but we must forget ourselves in the effort we make. In this realm, there is no subjectivity or objectivity. Our mind is just calm, without even any awareness. In this unawareness, every effort and every idea and thought will vanish. So probably that's the state of no waves that he talked about before. So it is necessary for us to encourage ourselves and to make an effort up to the last moment when all effort disappears. What I try to explain with the top of the 100 feet high pole, and then you make an extra step and you fall and all effort disappears. You should keep your mind on your breathing until you are not aware of your breathing. We should try to continue our effort forever, but we should not expect to reach some stage when we will forget all about it. We should try to continue our effort forever, but we should not expect to reach some stage when we will forget about it. Again, an important point. On the one hand, it's important to forget about effort, to get to this place where no effort is needed anymore. But if you practice with the idea, I want to get to that stage, I want to get into that zone, when will I finally get there when no effort is needed anymore? You will never get there. So just continue. Stay with the breath is what he says. You can stay also with the posture. When you wash the dishes, just stay with washing the dishes. And don't do it with the hope, if I wash the dishes long enough, eventually they will wash themselves by themselves. Eventually I would get into the state that the Chinese call wu wei, non-doing. Yes, there is this state of non-doing. But if you make an effort in the hopes to get there, you will never get there. And if you don't make an effort and just lie on the couch in the hope that one day everything will happen by itself out of wu wei, it will also won't happen. So just make an effort and forget about the idea that you want to get into that non-effort state, the effortless state. Let me continue for just a little bit more. We should just try to keep our mind on our breathing. That is our actual practice. And again, it could be washing the dishes. It could be staying with the posture. That effort will be refined more and more while you are sitting. At first, the effort you make is quite rough and impure. But by the power of practice, the effort will become purer and purer. When your effort becomes pure, your body and mind become pure. This is the way we practice Zen. Once you understand our innate power to purify ourselves and our surroundings, you can act properly and you will learn from those around you and you will become friendly with others. This is the merit of Zen practice. But the way of practice is just to be concentrated on your breathing with the right posture and with great pure effort. This is how we practice Zen. So he started with saying, actually, effort is not good for your practice because it creates waves, and he ends with the importance of effort. And it seems to contradict itself, but as I try to say, you have to make an effort, well, to let go of effort. You have to become one with what you do. And there is something like this effortless state, but you have to also let go of the idea, I want to reach that effortless state. But okay, I've talked a lot already. If you have any questions, anything you would like to share, you're welcome to do so now. Any questions? Anything you would like to share? Julian, please.
I think with Suzuki, we always have to remember who he was talking, who these lectures were for in the first place, weren't they? You know, he was having a lot of kind of what's the word, like ex-hippies coming to him in San Francisco, and I think he was trying to emphasize you've got to make some kind of effort. You can't just lounge on the floor. So I think it was a little bit culturally specific to
Mm,
the time. But I've just always thought the weeding metaphor, ever since I first read the book, you know, decades ago, I thought the weeding metaphor is so great because when I first started sitting, I thought I had to make my mind like empty.
mm, mm, mm,
And we've got a little garden out here. As long as I weed it, the weeds come back. And you just have to quietly accept the
mm.
practice of going out in the garden. And you know that that day's effort will help, but it won't make it weedless forever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that when I'm sitting and thoughts come, I always just try and remember the
Mm,
weeding metaphor.
mm, mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share? Joseph, please.
Um, where did the metaphor of the 100-foot pole come
Yeah.
from again? Because I really liked that, but I didn't catch where it was from originally.
It's some Chinese text. Um, if you look on the internet, Zen 100-foot pole, you might find the original. Dogen Zenji mentions it a couple of times in the Zuimonki, but it's, I think, more, I think it's a Rinzai master. Um, but I can't tell you the exact name and I can't tell you the exact text. But it should be fairly easy to find on the internet.
Joe, I've just put it in my new book. I'll send you the link when I've found it again.
Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share? Jan, please.
Yes, I on this topic of effort, I had these days like a metaphor forming in my mind that this question of effort is like a rocket. That once the rocket is launched, you need a lot of effort, a lot of engines, but once it's on the space, it needs to take out the engines, it needs to take out the effort, and then just with very few efforts, where it just goes onto where it needs to go. But there's no need of a big effort once you are already on the space. You need to, well, I'm using this metaphor when you need to start practice. You need to perhaps needs this belief that you need points. You need to earn points just to start practicing. But once you have the inertia, you don't need this anymore.
Mm, mm. Yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah. Mm. Any other things, Jan?
Yeah, well, I'll ask you the question I had for this week if you have time. So it's a bit related also what you were asking, what we are doing here, and also related to the last questions I formulated last week. It's but I believe the answer is different. So if is about if Zen is again is only about not playing the game and being present and sitting. So the question is, why are these rituals? So why there are rituals in Zen? Why do we need Buddha statues or circle drawings? Why dressing in certain way? Why shaving the head? Is not all this part of the game that you said that we should get out? And perhaps asking in a different way is why do we need to keep Zen as a religion and not perhaps just as a philosophy?
Well, one question is, I mean, it's a question that's often asked. And first, we should ask ourselves, well, why is all these forms and all these rules and all these statues and the way they dress a problem for me? Why would I prefer to practice Zen just as a philosophy and not in a form that resembles a religious cult? And the answer, well, it depends on the problem, on the person, but probably it's because, well, that would make it much easier for me. If I don't have to follow all these rules and I don't have to bow here and there and I don't have to dress in a certain way, it makes it much easier for me. But when you go to a dojo, people expect you to follow these rules and there's all kinds of, I don't know, things you have to obey. And you say it's almost like a game. And I always say you have to take a break from the game. And then I say, well, return to the game, but play in a different way. And for example, life in a monastery, it's also a game. There's many rules, but it's a different game because you can't gain anything there. There's nothing to gain from bowing in a certain way. There's nothing to gain from taking the first step with the left foot, shaving your head. You don't gain anything from that. Why do you do it? Why do you do it still? Because for one thing, for example, with the left foot first, it's important to be in what you are. Just as today Suzuki Roshi says, stay with the breath. Of course, it's not important if you take the first step with the left or with the right foot, but you should be aware, you should be attentive or mindful in that moment. Of course, if you don't become a Buddha, there's no Buddha to be found anywhere. Still, as an expression of respect, you bow. And this thought or this feeling that I talked about in the beginning, I would rather not, because it's a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass to follow all these rules. I'd rather just follow Zen as my personal philosophy without having to bow to any Buddha. Isn't that also a way of playing your game? Of just trying to make everything fit your own preferences? And when I say take a break from the game, I mean that. Stop trying to adjust everything to your preferences and just be in what you do. When people tell you to bow to the Buddha, just bow to the Buddha. When people tell you to make the first step with the left foot, just do that. Stop playing your own personal game up there and say, oh, I'd prefer to go with the right foot first. I'd rather not to bow to those Buddhas. That's the game we should take a break from. And just be in what we do. And these rules allow us to just do something, and there's nothing to gain actually from that. There's nothing to gain from taking the first step with the left foot. Anything else? If not, it's 9 o'clock here in Japan, so maybe time to finish. Next week is the Emperor's birthday here in Japan. It's a holiday, but I will be back. Probably Shuen will be back to host us. And if you have time, you're welcome. Next week, I'm going to talk about this book to you by Sawaki Roshi again. So thank you for coming. Have a nice Chinese New Year's. Have a good week. Hopefully see you again next week. Bye.